I remember the late night college talk so vividly. I didn't know I wanted to be a rabbi at that point, yet I confidently declared, I want to live my life with my head in the clouds and my feet firmly planted on the ground. Well, what does that mean, my friends would push? See, I was practical enough to know that I needed to make a living, but instinctively, I knew that for me, the worldly was not enough. I yearned for the cosmic. For some reason, those two aspects seemed to needlessly compete. Our heads with our hearts, our intellects with our souls. I'm guessing that most of us do the practical well, but what about the understanding of our spiritual lives? I ask because I do spirituality for a living, and yet, even I, shy from sharing the contours of my soul. Perhaps it is the microchip nature of our world. Maybe we fear people thinking that we're a bit crazy talking about the ethereal. But on this evening of truth, I want to open up a bit about the matters of the soul. Specifically, I want to talk about one that has been on my mind a lot lately, and that is the subject of afterlife. The subject has always fascinated me. I think actually most of us wonder about afterlife at various points in our life, either because we wonder what it is that's going to happen to us, or we wonder where our loved ones have gone. So, do we Jews believe in an afterlife? And I don't mean philosophically, but I mean, do we actually think that something exists after we die? And if you do think that, do you think that we could actually be in touch with those people who are beyond the grave? You see, I ask because I do, and I have had those experiences, and they've come a lot lately. It started up recently after Marshall Sherman, a dear friend of so many in this sanctuary, died this past summer. Marshall's death took a significant toll on so many in our community. He was a past president of our congregation, a Torah study stalwart, and the main usher you would see standing right back there, year in and year out. He was an incredibly good friend to many. That is to say nothing of what he so obviously meant to Rini and their family. Immediately following his death, there was a sense of communal sadness. It felt heady for me personally and rabbinically. I take walks at night on my block to clear my head during times of confusion. Struggling, pacing Tower Drive, I felt this warmth pull my eyes to the clouds, and there was an image of Marshall. He looked at me with that devilish smile and he said, "Hey babe, how you doing?" I knew he wasn't there physically, but it felt as real as life itself. So I looked up and I said, "Mosh, how you doing? We're all struggling here without you," I told him. "I know it's hard, but I have to tell you I'm okay. I'm flying free and out of my disease-riddled body. I know it's hard, especially for Rini and the kids, but they're going to be okay. You need to take care of them. They need to take care of each other, but I'm really okay and everyone's going to be okay." "I love you, Mosh," I told him. "I love you too, babe," he said with that sweet charm. "Wait, before you go," I said, "how come I can so easily connect with you and not with my own mother? Please tell her I love her." "I will, Matthew, I will." The experience ended. I wasn't scared. I didn't feel strange. or at least not nearly as strange as I do now telling all of you, I actually felt comforted, like I had had a real interaction, not tangible, but real. So, do you think it's possible? Most of us, if asked, would say that Judaism doesn't believe in an afterlife. In fact, if you were raised in the Reform movement, most religious schools purposely deny the existence of life after death. And because we live in a nation that's predominantly Christian, and Christians feel so much more at ease talking about afterlife, most Jews just assume that it doesn't apply. So I ask again, what do you believe? As I said, I've been on a bit of an afterlife streak lately. I'll tell you about that in this fashion. It's interesting. I've barely had any connection with my father since he died almost 2 years ago. And I'll take a little tangent to tell you that my father was a devotee of the theater. He lived for it. He made Broadway part and parcel of my childhood. I saw my first Broadway show at 4, and with or without money, he found a way to make sure that it never stopped. There was no one who cheered or laughed or clapped as loud as my father. I used to turn red in embarrassment, but I was also deeply moved. I saw him come alive in ways that he didn't most any place else. I vividly observed his joy and his curiosity and his sadness, his brilliant intellect fulfilled. He would take that playbill and he'd roll it up and he would smack his hands together with that playbill louder than anyone else in the theater. I could see it now. And I saw it again this past summer. My father-in-law, Lauren's father, who's incredibly important to us, always makes sure that we get to the theater now, the two of us and our kids. So this past summer, he wanted to go see Hello, Dolly. 2 of the kids were in camp, so Talia, myself, and he asked Rabbi Perlman to come along. So off the 4 of us went to see Hello, Dolly. Now, if you haven't seen it, it is quite an experience. We go, and we're, of course, excited online, and we go through the first act, and it was thrilling, and then the second act comes along, and those of you who've seen it, maybe you've experienced the same thing. Thus comes the namesake, Hello, Dolly. I'm not going to sing it for you. You probably prefer that I not. But Bette Midler, even in her 70s with a bit of a diminished voice, she brought it like I have very rarely seen people bring it. And she started to sing, and extemporaneously, organically, everyone in the audience in the middle of the show got up for a standing ovation. And without even knowing it, instinctively, I found myself rolling up my playbill, and I started to clap with my hands, with excitement, with curiosity, with love. And sure enough, I turned down. And I saw my daughter looking at me the way I used to look at my father in the theater. I looked at my father-in-law, and there was such a thrill on his face. Somehow he knew, and I felt the strongest spirit of my own father than I had since the day that he had died, if not before. And when I had the courage to finally explain it to Talia later on, this was the only time in the last couple of years that she did not assess my actions as weird. That's what I get all the time, Dad, you're so weird. But at this moment, she didn't say a word about it. She took it in. I don't know what she did with it, but she felt it. So I ask you again, what do you believe? I know it's not fair, and I've mentioned this to you before whenever I talked about afterlife. This could be a whole course, but I do want you to leave here tonight knowing the 4, and I want to emphasize 4 mainstream views that Judaism has on afterlife. Because if you're brought up in almost any Reformed temple, you've never been told this before. but there are indeed four mainstream beliefs. The first is the most rational. The first is one that almost all of us could buy, that afterlife is sewn into the memories that we share with people after they go, that we talk about them at our dinner tables, that we talk about them by looking at their pictures, that we tell their stories, we share their ethics, we share their values, we share their anecdotes. All of us, folks, all of us, no matter our age, at one point realize that we want to leave a legacy, and it's our jobs to share their memories, and in that way they live on. Rational, acceptable, understandable, that's the first point of view. You have to start to stretch as you hear the next three. The second is called the immortality of the soul. And this is the Jewish teaching that after we leave this earth, our bodies dissipate with the grains of the earth, but our souls then fly off to a container place. You might call it heaven, you might call it God, and our souls flow free, they fly free, waiting eventually for a day when the world will come together and everything is joined together as one. Number three is called, and this is probably the most difficult to understand, or at least to rationally understand, it's called resurrection of the body. And by the way, I want to emphasize that this is actually the most mainstream Jewish thought. It's in every conservative prayer book, Orthodox prayer book, and as of 5 years ago, it's a choice in the Reform prayer book. And this says that when we die, our souls, like the previous theory, goes to this place that we'll call heaven, flies around and is able to be free, but here, when everything comes together, when there's this judgment day, our bodies are specifically, and at least supposedly, resurrected from our graves, and our bodies go up and meet our souls, and all of it comes back together as one. Now, I have to tell you, and I've said this before, I always wonder with this theory, like, do I get my 25-year-old svelte body? Or is it like the 98-year-old wrinkled version, I wonder? Although some of us are over 100 and don't look so wrinkled, Mort. And then there's number 4. This is called the transmigration of the soul. This comes from the mystics in Sfat, where many of us have visited on our Israel trips. And this is the Jewish view of reincarnation. This is the view that says there were 600,000 souls at Sinai, and each of those souls travel from body to body to body as the world goes on. Now again, the math doesn't really work out here, because there are more than 600,000 people in the world, even more than 600,000 Jews in the world. So maybe it's spiritual mitosis or something of that regard, but somehow these souls break up and go from body to body to body. And how many of us have used the expression, my goodness, that person has such a old soul? I've used that time after time when I have kids who are beyond their years from this pulpit at their bar bat mitzvah. So what do we mean when we say that? It's an expression, but somehow with us, we believe or we think that somehow this person has lived more years than their time here on earth. Those are the 4 mainstream beliefs. We don't talk about them, that they're absolutely out there, and at least according to tradition, they're not outlandish. So I ask you again, what do you believe? Are you open to the ideas? Are you open to the possibilities? Well, as you can hear from me thus far, I do believe. I doubt. I didn't say that I believe steadfastly. In fact, I've told you before on Yom Kippur that Jewish faith is not about total belief. It's about a mixture of belief and doubt, which equals faith. So I would say confidently, I have faith in this notion. And here is my rational attempt, and we'll see if you buy it. Here's my rational attempt to explain to you the non-rational. I spoke to you last week about that thing that I called a Solfi. Remember? You're probably happy I didn't come out with my camera this time. I use that frame because I believe in the soul. In fact, I've told Torah study this a couple of times before. Between my 4th and 5th year in rabbinic school, I did a chaplaincy at New York Hospital. And our supervisor told us that as part of the job, we had to spend one morning in open heart surgery. Her idea was that we shouldn't go pastor to people without actually witnessing surgery. I got to tell you, I am as squeamish as they come. So I was shaking, putting on my scrubs, and the doctor, his name was Wayne Isom. Maybe some of you heard of him. He was real famous. He did Isaac Stern's open heart surgery, did a lot of very important surgery over the years. And Dr. Isom is a Texan, and he said, Rabbi, I want you to stand right back there with the anesthesiologist. I want you to get the best view possible. Great. So I get up there, and they start to open up, and I'm trying to keep myself together. Didn't have much to eat that morning because I didn't want anything else to go into the person's body. And he says, Rabbi, let me give you a little tour. See right here, this is the heart, and this is the lungs, and underneath there, if you dig down, is the kidneys. So let me ask you a question, Rabbi. And I said, yes, Dr. Isom. He said, can you tell me where the soul is? Apparently, this was his trick with every rabbinic student that he pulled forth. So no, my dear friends, I don't believe the soul could be found when we are opened up for surgery, but I do believe in the soul. I believe it because I witness it when I have the sad privilege of being with people when they die. It happened to me the first time when my great-grandmother, when my bubby died, when I was in my 20s. And my uncle, you haven't gotten called out in a service yet out of all these years, so I'll tell you that my younger cousins, now adults with their own kids, wanted to see my bubby. And my uncle looked at me and said, why don't you take a crack about explaining life and death and soul and body? So I did, and the first thing that was clear to me and to my younger cousins, that my bubby was no longer there. There was a capsule there, there was a body there, but whatever it is that made her live was so far gone. And any of us, doctors or rabbis alike, who have been with people who have died, we know that immediately, whatever it is that makes that person live is not there, and indeed is only a capsule. So yes, I do believe in the soul. The soul is such a paradox. It's both elusive and ever-present. The soul is our deepest talents. The soul is our music and art, our love for those. The soul is our connection to the ocean and to the rainbow. What is the soul? The soul is our sensitivity and our compassion. The soul is our jealousy and our frustration. Our soul is present in our primal cries when we reel in pain, or in our laughter when we experience unadulterated joy. What else is our soul? Our soul is the chill that runs our spine when we are touched by powerful emotions. Our soul helps us see the world through our deepest yearnings. Our soul is our essence. It's our wisdom. It's our moral compass. It's the part of us that tells us the truth when no one else wants to. Our souls are the part of us that remind us that there is always the possibility for a better tomorrow. And here is the kicker. All other parts of us get old. Our muscles and our bones, we know they wear down. Our hair grays and falls out. Layers of our skin shed every day, and we wrinkle if we like it or not. But counterintuitively, our soul, as it gets older, actually only thrives more. Our souls get deeper and wiser as we get older. When everything physical about us diminishes, our soul only lives stronger, perhaps even eternally so. Yes, eternally so. I posit for you tonight that our soul is the only part of us that is eternal, the part of us which has a piece of God in it. So, and here's what you have to buy if you want to or not, and only reasons to me that if God has been, and God is, and God always will be, and that part of God is inside of us, which has been, is, and always will be, then that's how I think we might get that cosmic internet service that I was talking about earlier. That part in us which is eternal, I think has the chance and the opportunity to connect to the eternal that's no longer with us. So I could see it on some of your faces. When I presented this idea to that same father that I told you about, Later on from my sister, I heard, he said, "Has Matthew's head gone soft?" So before we get to that rationality that we love, just do me a favor tonight. Just do me a favor and at least consider the possibility. You see, one of the reasons I think religion has suffered in our day and age is because all it's become about is about ritual and ethics. And I'm not against ritual. I love worship services. I love holiday practice. You know, after my passion last week, I'm not against the ethical imperative. I just don't think we spend nearly enough time, however, pondering the possibilities of what might be. Religion should also be about navigating our cosmic consciousness, about being open to the ideas of the abstract. We are so good at proving what is not. But what might we fathom about the why not? We're so good at proving the not that we end up closing ourselves off to the why not. How do we know that it's not? There is so much that we can prove and disprove, but that is not in the realm of the empirical. This that I'm talking about is in the realm of letting ourselves wonder and wander and be open to the expanse of an entire sphere which we are part of, but we just can't see, at least with our eyes. The trick, of course, is that we have to be open and willing to be aware that it's there when we feel it. Instead of diverting and being scared of it because somehow it feels so real, somehow we have to be open to that beautiful part around us, even when it frightens us. We have to hang in there long enough so that when we feel our inner lives tugging at us, we have to plug into the most ethereal parts of ourselves. Because when we do, I think we have the possibility to connect to all parts of worlds that we don't see tangibly, but might absolutely exist. I'll tell you as I come to a conclusion, and you heard me say before, as talking about Marshall and my mother, I have wondered why it is, if I have these experiences, why I've had so few with her. And then I realized that the mortal pain of loss is so intense for us. I know that there are some of you here who have lost parents much, much, much younger than I, and if God forbid, have lost children. But I will tell you, for me personally, losing my mother when she was 68, and knowing that she could have been here for so many important occasions, including in 2 weeks when my son steps up here to become a bar mitzvah, there's so much pain in acknowledging that she's not here. So here's the thing about the pain that goes on for a while. Sometimes when we hold on to the mortal pain for a really long time, it locks us up and it doesn't allow us to open ourselves up to other parts and other realms. So recently, as soon as I've been reconciling that death, which has been many years now, I suddenly find myself so much more open to the love that always existed, even after her time on earth. So I will say to you, my good people, I come here tonight to invite you on a journey, to trust that part of yourselves which feels like there is more. I'm not sure, I told you this, I'm not sure if there is something more or not, but to allow ourselves the freedom to explore will help us evolve as human beings, and I believe will set us free in a way which will only help us soar. So I want to invite you and give you an opportunity. I'm going to ask Max to stand and to play that melody that is so familiar to all of us, the melody of Avinu Malkeinu. And I'll ask you, since you're sitting here, as you listen, to take an invitation into your own souls. The possibility of those things that you feel, that you think people will be crazy if we said it out loud. But I've said it out loud tonight already. So if you ever feel it, I ask you to plug into it. the experience of the abstract, the imagination of what could be. Could be. And if it is, why not connect to it? I'm not going to tell anyone. It's just for you. Who is it that's no longer here that you want to connect to? What do you want to say to them? What do you think they're trying to say to you? The wisdom and the love, the longing and the possibility. That's part of the reason you come to synagogue. It's to imagine the unimaginable. I promise they don't play this tune on CNN. Because this is the tune of the soul. Of the unimaginable. Taking the leap. Just maybe. And if you're down there in the canyons of your soul, in a moment we're going to open the ark, and on this holiest night of the year, this is the night of nights, this is the truth of truths. It's time for us now to supplicate and to yearn for and to ask for the things that we want most in this year. This is the time you get to pour out your heart in front of the open ark, to sing those age-old words, to ask God for what it is that you need to be whole. We invite up the Sterners and the Zissus to stand next to the ark as it's opened. We ask all of you to rise and turn to page 280 as we supplicate on this evening, Avinu Malkeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Koleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chamol Aleinu, Ve'alol Aleinu, Ve'tapeinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Kotveinu, B'Sefer Chaim טובים.
אבינו מלכנו, חדש עלינו, חדש עלינו, שנה טובה. אבינו מלכנו, שמע קולנו.
שמע קולנו. שמע
אבינו מלכנו, חוננו